It's finally time for me to publish my conversation with Andrew Aponick. When we tried to do this interview way back in the spring, we had problems with the quality of the video, and I didn't want to publish it because it wasn't fun to watch it. But when we last got together, we delved into a world that a lot of people don't know. Andrew has a past working in modeling, in music production, in Hollywood, in aid work, and he's seen a lot of things. And I think we should all know about it. I think you should know about it because it's important to know what is actually going on in the world in order to position ourselves as husbands, as fathers, as entrepreneurs, but maybe most importantly as spiritual beings wanting to get into right relationship with God in a time when that seems more important than ever. So I hope you will enjoy this conversation. I certainly found it fascinating, and I bring to you Andrew Aponick.
I guess we'll start with the typical "What do you do?" conversation, which
Yeah, sure.
I actually like. If you look at it from more of like a spiritual perspective, it's like our material, doing, yang as opposed to yang side of who we are. And I don't think it defines us. But if we're gonna, just for purposes of introducing myself,
Sure.
I am a physiologist, a trauma recovery coach. I do internal family systems therapy with my clients, work with addicts. I'm a recovering addict myself, opiates. Um, I'm a recovering conspiracy theorist, a recovering activist, a recovering people pleaser, a recovering narcissist. I think all the things that the shadowy sides of society I've dabbled in, and now I'm working on healing and integrating. Um, Hollywood, like you said, I worked there, ran an independent record label, managed rappers, recording artists predominantly. Um, and then I ran a nonprofit in the activist and journalist world, and that too has its own shadow, dark side. Even getting into the humanitarian world and aid operations, that's really shadowy because that's where the most vulnerable people are, and the psychopaths of the world seek out vulnerable people. So that was also a shock to me. Um,
Because you weren't aware that you were going to be faced with what you ended up being
yeah,
faced with.
yeah. I mean, so
Right.
um, long story short, I was heading to Hurricane Harvey in Houston, and I was finishing up reading a book called Snakes in Suits When Psychopaths Go to Work by a guy named Dr. Robert Hare, who's considered like the world's foremost psychopathy researcher. And it was about corporate psychopathy. And I just remember remarking to myself, oh, that's fascinating. Too bad I'm not in the corporate world, or Hollywood anymore. That's not going to really apply to what I'm doing now. I'm going to do some humanitarian work, and I couldn't be more wrong. And thankfully, I read the book. This was now going on 10 years ago because my nonprofit was infiltrated by a government asset. And I think one or two more I can't prove were also in bed with the deep state. But nonetheless, um, thankfully, I understood what a psychopath looks like, and eventually, I could see the red flags. Um, and we blew the whistle on him and got him kicked out. But he sabotaged my nonprofit, and a lot of the damage was already done. So yeah, the humanitarian world, psychopaths, like I said, seek out the most vulnerable people. Those are their best victims, and so just like predators are in Hollywood, everyone's desperate to get famous, so those people are vulnerable. Uh, Predators go to church and seek out children; they're the most vulnerable. Boy Scouts, all that stuff. While the humanitarian world is filled with people whose lives have been completely devastated, and they're traumatized, and now they're dependent on the government, and other institutions for help to literally be saved. So they're completely at the whim of who's ever coming to save them, and so that's it's a lot of human.
And that branch of the system in the US is called FEMA, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. FEMA. Oh, FEMA's the worst, and
Yeah.
they
You've
were.
had dealings with them?
Oh yeah, they were. Even about my 2016 to 2018 was the time I dealt with them a lot. and they're already bad. I mean, now with Hurricane, what was it, Helene? I think it was in North Carolina. Now it's
Mm,
just a complete shit show. But even back then, they are completely inept by, I think, by design, and they're essentially
right.
there to just control disaster situations, uh, and so to make people go through the proper channels. And people like myself who were kind of rogue, we were down there on our own, running our own operations. We couldn't be controlled by them, and
Right.
but eventually, what happened is the largest aid operation I was involved in, which I was helping to lead. We started to get slowly and incrementally involved with powerful people, and you know, back then, naive. Oh, this rich.
For funding purposes,
Yeah, of
or
course, for funding purposes, yeah.
yeah,
And they played all the right roles and put on the right masks and pretended to be the right people. These rich, these wealthy people. One of them's a
sure,
billionaire. One of them's
yeah.
deeply involved with the Ukraine, and that should tell you all you need to know about that. You know,
Mm,
um, but then I
with
started
the
seeing the red.
Zelensky,
I started seeing the red flags. But but
yeah.
but by then I was already embedded with them, and he was embedded with FEMA, and they're all. It's like this mishmash, this web you can't see, but it's there. And I think in deeply embedded in
Fascinating,
that
yeah.
web was human trafficking as well. And
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So your organization that you founded from your own positive intention to help
yeah,
got actually infiltrated
yeah,
by a member of the system. How does that process of infiltration work?
yeah.
Are you identified as like up and coming, and then they send somebody to
Mhm.
sabotage you? Do they use your organization as a platform for predatory activities? How does that
Yeah.
happen?
Well, actually, I didn't create the organization. It's called Solutions Institute.
I see.
It was created by a
Solutions
guy named
Institute.
so it was created by a guy named Dan Johnson, and
Mm,
he went off to fight the IRS, and so he appointed me president. Um,
I see.
but he was already, I would honestly argue, the most powerful activist in the country. He
Wow.
was successfully fighting the National Defense Authorization Act, which has a section 1021 of it called indefinite detention, which I think is the most unconstitutional thing so
Yeah.
far in this
Wow.
country, where they can just scoop you up. Like right now, as we're talking, they can literally just walk into my office, grab me, put me into a van, ship me off to a CIA black site anywhere in the world with no trial, no lawyer, no phone call, no due process. And because we're talking about these things right now, we're threats to our national security, and this is legalized. So all you got to do is say threat to national security. So, anyways, this guy was successfully fighting them, and I found him on RT, Russia Today, which is just a
Ah.
controlled opposition platform. You know,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but in there's organic people like him. I think he was organic, but I think he got so powerful that they infiltrated his operations, and by the time
Mm,
he appointed me, it was already infiltrated. It was actually
I
it was
see.
kind of a honeypot, to be honest, because the organization I had 26, so to speak, advisors, some from some of the most
Hmm.
powerful alternative media outlets, in the country and arguably the world, leaders of activist movements. So all these figures kind of, so to speak, surrounded me, if you will, and so it became
Right.
like a honeypot. And what they did was send this guy in, Bobby Rodrigo. That was his name. We knew his real name is Robert Bordeaux, and he had literally infiltrated every uh, conceivable powerful social movement and alternative media outlet. From conservative to libertarian to anarchist, Republican, Democrat, all of them. He was just.
So he was a veteran of the game.
Oh yeah, and this guy, just to give you an idea of how insidious the government is, this guy was a mafia-tied strip club owner, and he had gone to prison for rape, and
Mm,
they had actually contracted his services to give him a sweetheart deal to get out of prison, and he infiltrated prostitution rings. So they sent a rapist into prostitution rings to have sex, rape women, and then catch them, and prosecute them. So
wow.
he started off his career as a legal rapist, and then
Mm,
now you imagine that was like I don't even know, in the late 2000s. So by the time he gets to me, God only knows what he's doing, how
Mm.
powerful. As a protected government asset, he has pretty much complete immunity to do what he wants. And by the
Wow.
time that we blew the whistle on him and we outed him, he had hundreds of arrest warrants that were issued but never followed through. He had international arrest warrants for defrauding international governments, many Caribbean governments,
Mm.
during his hurricane operations. And so,
If he were actually to be arrested, would the U.S. authorities intervene and say, let him out?
well, they would just show up. Two guys in black suits would show up to the jail, and
Yeah.
take him out and say,
Right.
"Sorry, we have jurisdiction with this guy, and there's literally nothing
Uh-huh.
you could do, or say. We don't even have to tell you. They just whip out a badge, take him."
Mm.
So I don't know. I mean, the FBI, CIA, NSA, any one of those shadowy agencies could just show up and take him from jail and prison and say he's a protected government. I don't even think
Yeah.
they'd have to even say that. They don't have to say anything.
Interesting. Yeah, because one of the things that I'm sure a lot of us have realized by now is that social causes and the various activist organizations that start out, I think, with the very best of intentions.
Hmm.
We watch them all be subverted and gradually they turn into vessels for
Yeah.
corruption
Yep.
and like undermining the social order. And I think we saw that with the way that Occupy Wall Street was
Hmm.
undermined, and
Yep.
well, various like anti-racism obviously quickly became a way to instigate racial
Yep.
division, and
Yep.
so there is clearly a way in which these people are trained. They're professionals at their game, but what I don't get is what's their strategy in order to ensure that they can do all of these things. They can plant all of these
Hmm.
mines that will blow up. What's their technology, their occult technology that allows them to go under the radar
Yeah.
and still carry out their attacks?
Well, wow, man. We could do a whole podcast just on the psychosociology of this, but
Yeah.
um, first off, from the most underlying fundamental psychology of it is trauma survivors are oftentimes drawn to these types of causes because trauma survivors, you know they have this need to save people, and
Yeah.
so right off the bat Hollywood draws in a lot of trauma survivors, activism draws them in, a lot of codependent people, or worse, narcissists, cult leaders, people who can
Mm,
actually be easily triggered. um, and
mm,
we can get into CIA, MK Ultra, mind control, that kind of stuff. So already people are easily controlled. When I got into it, I had just started kind of sobriety and recovery, but I was not nearly where I am today. This was 10 years ago. So you could
yeah.
trigger me and control me. But I mean, then there's something called reward psychology, the authority of reward. So, if they're dangling the carrot of money in front of you, especially activists are poor. If you're actually an authentic activist, you're poor. If you're not
Hmm.
corrupted. So I was making $1,000 a month. You could barely live off that in America, but that's what I was making. So if they took that away from me, it could unconsciously cause me to start to veer in the direction of whoever is paying me. And that guy Dan Johnson was paying me, who was getting money from the Koch brothers, the billionaires. I wrote
Mm,
an article on this recently. I was technically controlled opposition. Everyone throws that word around,
yeah.
um, but just by virtue of reward authority, I was to some degree controlled, and I was willing to some, at times to look past red flags. So that's like the most simple one, and then there's actual bribes.
So you're kind of desperate in a
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, desperate. Then there's
Yeah.
bribes. You know,
Yeah.
um, you know. Of course, you have to be a little more corrupt, and unconscious to take those bribes. I was bribed a couple times by the Soroses of the world, even the Israeli Mossad in Flint, Michigan. That's a whole another crazy story. Um, but
So the Soros organization, Open Society, came to
oh
you to
yeah,
give you
yeah,
money.
absolutely, and both sides, the Koch brothers and the Soroses. They're the right side is the Koch brothers,
Yeah.
Soros is the left side. So
Are they effectively the same when you operate, or
I mean,
you
essentially, yeah,
relate
they're
to them?
social engineering. They're two ends of the same social engineering spectrum. You know, so
Got it.
yeah, so they could bribe people. I didn't take the bribes, and then at the time I was struggling with addiction, on and off. I
Mm,
wasn't a complete basket case like I was in my 20s and early 30s, but I was still dabbling, and they knew because they're surveilling me. One guy tried to
mm,
like very slyly tell me that like, oh, it would be a shame if the world knew, all the partying you're doing, and I was like, too bad for them though. I was already starting to be public about my struggles because I try to like kind of lead by example, kind of a guinea pig on social media. So they actually, they couldn't use the power of shame to control me through that, right?
interesting.
But
Yeah.
then there's
So they're looking for your weaknesses to apply
exactly,
leverage.
exactly. Then there's blackmail.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
like if I was trying to hide that and they knew about it, then they could blackmail it. Or there's other ways to
Yeah.
blackmail. The most notorious as we go into the Epstein stuff is they'll send under, like if I had a sex addiction, if I was a womanizer, they'd send a girl who's like 17 with a lot of makeup on. She could look 20. I get really
Mm,
drunk one night, sleep with her, or worse, I'm just an actual pedophile. But at the very least, I could just be a womanizer, which is still not a good thing. But nonetheless,
mm,
I could sleep with her, and then the next day they could send me a picture of her, send me an email with a picture of her license, and then boom, as soon as I see that license with her date of birth saying she's 17, they don't even have to
right.
say anything. It's already, the unspoken. Okay, now you're fully controlled,
Mm,
Andrew, unless you want to go to prison, for soliciting a minor, or pedophilia,
right.
so they can
Right.
control you that way. You know,
Yeah.
there's a
Get
lot
it.
of different levels to it, and then they can also send you people, which is kind of what they do when they infiltrate organizations. Is they send you people, and this is what they do. They surround the president and they surround the most powerful politicians with people from the deep state, and they don't even realize that they're double agents. And they'll just, influence the politicians, influence the activists, influence the leaders. They won't
Mm,
say anything overt like I'm here to tell you what to do, or I'm gonna uh, threaten you with blackmail. They'll just be like, "Hey, President Trump, I think it would be a great idea if you do this. Let's bring in XYZ people and organization to help us, achieve this campaign." And Trump
mm,
is just kind of a useful idiot. Okay, sure. And then so he doesn't even realize now he's bringing this whole organization, this whole institution of people who are actually deep state agents. The CIA has a
right.
lot of cover organizations, and nonprofits and NGOs. They
Mm,
front as legitimate activist organizations or lobbying groups or whatever, but they're really just deep state organizations. And so,
right.
Trump's people of the world could have even been me to some degree. Bobby Rodrigo could have said, Andrew, we should bring in XYZ organization. And at surface level, at face value, oh, they look great. I see them on social media. They say great things. I don't know who they really are, you know. So
Mm.
now I start working with them, and my intention's good, of course, but I don't know who they really are.
Yes, of course.
So
Yeah.
they bring that in.
Okay, so that whole field is just riddled
Oh yeah,
with pitfalls and trapdoors and
absolutely,
yeah,
100%.
mines,
Yeah,
minefield.
yep.
Okay, wow. So, well, you've certainly lived an interesting life. I know a little bit about you
Mhm.
by now, and it sounds like for whatever reason, God has placed you right at the heart of a lot of dark and sinister activities,
Mhm.
and so you've been exposed to a lot of these things.
Uh,
And the activism it came after the whole
yeah,
Hollywood
yeah.
experience, didn't it?
Hmm.
So why don't we explore a little bit the whole Hollywood experience? Why did you arrive there in the first place? How did that turn into a music
Yeah,
career? That's an interesting story with a lot
yeah,
of,
yeah.
I think, relevant details in
Hmm.
these Epstein file
Yeah.
times.
Well, it started off. Man, if you really want to go back, it's funny, man. There was these websites called like the original social medias were called BBS's bulletin board systems. They were like even before AOL, and you could like upload a picture file, which would take like 10 minutes to upload a JPEG, like 100K.
The modem,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And then by like, and then AOL happened, and then by like 1997, 1998. Uh, I had like already been exercising and bodybuilding, and so I had a couple pictures floating around the internet. And then there was this website called hotornot.com and rate my picture and these silly, really narcissistic
Yeah.
things. And I posted a picture and won the first like hot person contest or something like that. And then one thing led to another. Agents found me, and of course,
Mm.
literally the first agent who found me. Now I'm like 19, 20, was a guy who was good friends with Calvin Klein, who,
Mm.
without Google and all that stuff back then in the year 99, 2000, I couldn't figure out, I didn't know who he was. Turns out that
Mm.
he had a modeling agency that was taken down because he had owned a beach house on the Jersey Shore, and he placed his models there to live, the ones from out of town, and he put cameras in it, and was,
So his own private Big
yeah,
Brother
exactly, yeah. Michael
show. Okay.
Malizia, his name was, and
Michael
he took
Malaysia.
from an artistic standpoint, he took a really good picture of me, and he got the attention of Calvin Klein, and they wanted to. He wanted me to go to a party, and essentially, at first, I was like, "Oh, cool, a party in the Hamptons." I grew up in New York, on Long Island. The Hamptons is like the it place. Um,
Mm.
oh, but I'm going to meet all the right people, and then he basically said to me, "Are you willing to stay after hours?" I was like, "What does that mean?" You know, and he basically said, "Yeah, to hang out with Calvin and his buddies," and wink, wink. You know, and by then, I was like, "No, I don't know about that." This is nothing against gay people, but I'm not gay, and I know what that means. And you're gonna have to pull favors to get this Calvin Klein job. And that's what they do. They reel you in. Oh, I'm going to send you to this person and to that organization and to that company and this photographer. Then once you get there and they kind of tease you, then they say, okay, well, this is what you have to do to get the job or to maintain it.
Right.
So this happened with me.
So you were invited to be basically sexually intimate with a lot of big
Yeah,
shots.
yeah, essentially, yeah.
Right.
And the same thing happened with Abercrombie. Oh, what the heck is his age? Jason Canner. I think he was Tatum Channing's agent at the time. He was an up and coming, pretty big agent, and he had a big in with Abercrombie. And long story short, I booked it, and he goes, "Oh, come to my apartment tomorrow to take Polaroids." I'm like, "What do we got to do that for?" He said, "Oh, they're going to be nude." I'm like, "Why do they need to be nude?" And he goes, "Oh, well, you're on set Abercrombie all week. You're going to be nude most of the time." I'm like, "Why would that even be necessary? It's a mainstream, clothing company, and these quarterly catalogs are not nude." And he goes, "Oh, well, that's Bruce." Literally, the guy's so infamous they call him Bruce. Everyone just calls him Bruce. He's one of the most powerful photographers in modeling, and now he's has all kinds of sexual lawsuits. And the owner of Abercrombie is now being tried, or at least uh, he's skating charges, but he's been charged with pedophilia, human trafficking. But anyways, long story short, if you want to stay on set, you have to be naked and you have to cooperate. You know, wink, wink. He
Right.
said, "No, I'm not going to cooperate. I'm not doing that." And he goes, "Well, I can't send a model who doesn't cooperate. It's going to make me look bad." And I was like, "Well,
Uh-huh.
shit." And so right off the bat, he dropped me. And so that led, I did some more modeling, some more acting, more disappointments because it just kept having to be the same thing over.
So there was always some kind of perverted aspect
For
to it.
the more higher paying, they call them
Yeah.
fashion jobs or more commercial, lucrative jobs. You mostly had to
Mm.
do that. So I just kind of stayed doing small time commercial print work. I was in like bodybuilding magazines. I was in a silly movie with Nicole Kidman called Stepford Wives with Matthew Broderick and a bunch of other
That's the
stars. Yeah,
the android
yeah. Actually, it
woman
was
thing,
interesting. A
right?
lot of
Yeah.
predictive programming, smart
Yeah.
devices. Their homes were all they're talking to their devices. They had the robots, AI, all that stuff. Anyway. But anyways, how I got
Mm.
into the music business was I was a personal trainer at the time, and so I
Mm.
kind of started to like train powerful people in Hollywood. And like what, for instance, I trained Cuba Gooding Jr.'s uncle. He had connections in the industry. I trained some photographers. They had connections, and one thing led to another. I was a musician growing up, so I always wanted to go into the music business, and So I decided to just on a whim. I'm kind of crazy like that. I just decided to go into the music business, and I was into hip hop, and I was already kind of deeply embedded with a lot of friends growing up in that community,
Mm,
and I started managing and representing rappers, and then
mm.
I started an independent record label and started to brush and rub elbows, so to speak, with the more powerful people, and that's where like Geffen came in, and the owner of uh, Interscope Records, Jimmy Iovine, which like he Eminem, Aftermath Records, Dr. Dre, all those guys. They owned Madonna at the time, um,
Mm.
and
Wow, so
yeah,
the real big names
yeah, yeah,
in the
yeah,
industry.
yeah, and I hated. I wouldn't say I hated. I knew, admittedly, I wanted to be like them, but I couldn't pull it off because I'm not like them. You know, so like I also kept
Mm.
failing. So in the modeling world, I failed because I wasn't willing to compromise my own sexuality and nature of that. And then in the music business, I had to be a complete psychopath, or at least sociopath, and just lie, 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 lie all the time. And don't get me wrong, at the time I was deep in addiction, and my ego was was fairly large. So here and there, I would tell stories, I would name drop, I do some of the typical stuff in Hollywood. But in order to make it, you have to be completely ruthless. And so
Right.
I couldn't do that.
So, what's the purpose of the lying?
Oh, to just to be so Hollywood is a professional mask wearing industry. Literally, you're acting.
Yeah.
It's about acting, and it's not just the actors; it's the business people also. They're also putting on masks.
Mm,
They're also being
mm.
who they need to be at every moment to sell what they need to sell. I mean, that's kind of a lot of sales, anyways. You know, some of the better salespeople, sadly, are the fakest. The most inauthentic.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
and so you have to be like that, and Hollywood attracts that because that's what people are doing. They're putting on masks. Whether they're getting paid for it in a movie, or they're getting paid for it negotiating deals, on the other side of the camera. You know,
Yeah.
so it's like you heard the expression "fake it till you make it." Hollywood is the epitome of "fake it till you make it." So
That also sounds like you're in a world where literally every relationship you're in is
yep,
transactional.
100%. It's pretty sad and
Mm.
superficial, and it robs you of your soul. And my drug use went to next to the next level once I got into it. I was already fairly addicted by about 2008, but once I got into that world, it just $1,000, sometimes $2,000 a week on drugs and alcohol.
Wow.
Just
So that world you're describing now, I guess we can describe that as degenerate or like at some level
in some level, yeah,
twi-
yeah,
twisted,
mm,
but perhaps not like totally malevolent. It's like there are degrees of the
absolutely, yeah.
corruption here. Were you exposed to anything of a darker sort, or were you not deep enough into this system
Yeah.
to?
Well, like you said, there's levels. So there's the
Yeah.
surface level, and there's a lot of like
Yes.
perfectly good quote unquote people. Like for instance, a lot of the people in like editing, and the more creative people, that are hired by
Yeah.
movie studios and production companies and whatnot. They're literally just subcontracting their work. They're pretty disconnected from that world. So at face value, they're just
Do they work remotely
yeah,
all the
a
time,
lot of like
or?
subcontracting. A lot of these production companies start off as little production companies, then they become
Yeah.
conglomerates, of course. But like it's
Yeah.
regular people, like graphic artists and stuff like that. Like nothing, no one's
Visual effects
insidious, no one
artists. Yeah.
malevolent. Then you move up to the next
Mm.
level and to the next level, and once you get into like the workings of the operations of the business, that's where it's because now you have power, and that's where you're starting to make decisions on behalf of actors and artists, and that's where the compromisation comes into play. And that's similar to what I was explaining to you with activism, in the deep state. I mean,
Hmm.
Roseanne Barr said it herself. CIA, MK Ultra runs Hollywood. You know, and
Yeah.
so when you
Yeah. She's been going off
what's that?
off the deep end. She's been going off the
Good
deep
for her.
end
Good,
over the
yeah,
last
yeah.
couple of years. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, once you become into a position of making decisions on behalf of artists,
Yeah.
and projects and movies and careers. That's where they start to get their little sticky fingers in there and try to control you. And the more I moved up, the more I realized the Freemasons, are embedded with everything. Um,
Mm.
and the more I realized that it's like you have to cooperate. There is a certain um, type of person that they want, both artist and business person, you know. And if you're
Interesting.
willing to
So they're
be that type
looking
of
for,
person, then
yeah.
you can make it. And I wasn't. I'll be honest, I wanted to be like I wanted to be that like mogul, who's willing to
Mm.
just make decisions, ruthlessly, but because it looks cool, in the movies and stuff to be this powerful mogul, but like you have to be that person psycho spiritually. And I couldn't do it. I
Mm.
just couldn't pull it off. No matter how much drugs I could do to numb myself, I just couldn't. I couldn't pull it off. But um,
Mm.
but yeah, then as you move up, then you do the satanic stuff, and so like I've discussed it a
Okay.
number of times, and they basically what they do is they figure out if you're willing to cooperate by doing smaller things. So like going into the Geffen thing, the billionaire who owned DreamWorks with Spielberg. Spielberg, by the way, is a complete predator. You know, groomed and preyed on children, like in the movie Goonies and the movie Hook, about
Mm.
Peter Pan and about children. A lot of stuff like that. Without going into him, Geffen was his business partner, and I sat. He was one of the most powerful music moguls ever, and I sat face to face with him over a business lunch meeting, and he basically asked me, "How come in my 30s I'm not more powerful and wealthy and all this stuff?" And I said, "Because I have integrity." And he almost fell out of his seat laughing. And he was like, "You're in the wrong business, buddy." you know. And this guy, meanwhile, was looking at me like literally through my soul, like through me, and it felt like the movie Predator, not well, actually Predator 2, but Terminator, where he's like scanning the environment and looking for all the vulnerabilities. It's like he was doing that with my soul, and he's looking into my
Wow.
soul to see if he could compromise me or not. And he basically told me, it's like, even though you're a heterosexual male, a lot of the leading men and executives that are straight, they still quote unquote take one for their team, meaning on the receiving end. If you can't function, you know what I'm saying, in the sexual act, you
R-
could be on the
So,
receiving
so,
end. You know,
so why is that so important for the industry?
well, for one, think about it. If you are willing to compromise your very sexual nature and submit to them,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
else are you willing to submit to? You know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
once you start submitting, then now they have that over you, you know, that
Will they use that as blackmail?
exactly, oh, you've done gay acts, and you saw like Cat Williams. I don't know if you remember him last year. He exposed a lot of stuff. He's a black comedian. He was the one who actually started calling out Diddy before the whole Diddy thing happened. And so he started talking about how a lot of rappers and recording artists are either gay, bisexual, or they've compromised themselves, a handful of times to get where they are, and so now,
Well, rumor on the street was that P Diddy, like to get anywhere in the, I guess it's in the hip hop industry primarily.
yeah,
P Diddy is associated with rap and hip hop. Um, that yeah, you needed to engage in homosexual
mhm,
acts.
yeah. Well, he's a,
So
he's a um he's pretty much
it's a strange, it's like a humiliation
it's not
ritual,
fully a
or
humiliation ritual. So the psychology of Hollywood is essentially like a fraternity, like a secret society.
like a
It's
hazing.
like a gang. There's like blood in, blood out,
Ah,
hazing, initiation rituals to get in, and the
yeah.
leaders of all these largest production companies and record labels are essentially mafia leaders, and it makes perfect sense because Diddy's father was a gang member who was deeply embedded with gangs in the Bronx and in Harlem during the time of Nicky Barnes, and I forget the other guy's name. They were the most powerful heroin dealers on the planet at the time. They were like billionaires in the 70s and 80s, which gives you an idea how powerful they were. And Diddy's father was like a competitor of them. Diddy's father was assassinated, and Diddy was like 2 or 3 years old. So he grew up, without a father. His father was a powerful womanizer, gang member. Um, and we want to get to psychology. Now, what happens is, and I know you could appreciate this, dealing with masculine and feminine. Now, his mother has to raise him, and she has to be the masculine also to be the father. And so the mother becomes very controlling, especially when you're growing up on the streets of Harlem. And what that creates is a lot of resentment. It creates a mother wound. It creates an anima distortion. The anima is the female side of the male energy. And so there's already resentment and hate for women. You saw probably him beating women. I forget that woman's name, his girlfriend, that the video of him beating her. And then he was an altar boy in the Catholic Church.
Oh dear.
Yeah. So now, on top of it, he was likely molested. You know, now
Mm.
he not only hated women, now he's molested by men. And so now that opens up the floodgates for his homosexual side. And so and then those people with all that trauma and all that stuff to hide, growing up the son of a gangster, it makes perfect sense that this guy eventually read. Look at the name of his record label, Bad Boy Entertainment. Like they unconsciously project who they are. You just have to realize it. Bad boy. I mean, that's literally what he was. So you have to be a mafia type leader in that world. And so the people that we're looking up to the Jay Z's, the Diddy's, what we used to look up to. I know I did for a time. Um, they're basically mafia leaders, and the mafia too is in bed with the CIA. We can go into all that stuff. That's a whole nother rabbit hole. But long story short, all those institutions, government, Hollywood,
But
military, it's all run like a gang. With
mm,
humiliation rituals. Look at the military. You have basic training. The whole 3 months, you're humiliated for 3 months.
mm,
Fraternities. What do they do for 3 months? They're hazed and humiliated. The secret
yeah,
societies, which those are, go hand in hand. Humiliated. The record labels, humiliated. You know,
right.
all that stuff.
And humiliation rituals create blackmail
Yep,
material, and then
yep.
you're stuck.
And if you're
And
willing to
then,
to to submit to the humiliation, then you are a compromisable person. And they
are there anyone inside of that world? Is there a single person there who's happy?
not for long. Not for long.
Right. So they're all like severely distorted and
Yeah,
perverted
you
human
have you
psyches.
have to be. You cannot be
Right.
at that level. Um, Basically, I was faced with a crossroads after the Geffen thing, and it was like try and stay in mainstream hip hop. And at that time, I was starting to wake up, so I was trying to push conscious artists into the mainstream, very naively, of course. So it was like try and stay there, or go into the underground route. And the underground route is very underpaid, and it's you working 18 hours a day because in order to make a normal living, you have to really, really, really hustle. So
Right.
I took the third road, which was retire. That was it.
Right. Yeah.
Like there's no way I could do it. I likened it.
And then you went to aid work to discover a better
Oh
life, and then.
yeah, yeah,
Okay. So you've taken a couple of arrows and daggers to your body and mind
yes,
over the years.
yes. I have.
Yeah. So how is that? How's that shaped your life? Have it has it made you cynical or jaded?
Um, Surprisingly, you would think more. I
Mm,
just got this flashback when I got into activism. Is I'll never forget this. Another activist friend of mine said, "Be wary of any activist who doesn't have a sense of humor." You know,
mm,
those are the ones who are not just cynical, but they take themselves too seriously. And there's one thing I
mm.
always did, for better or for worse, because sometimes self-deprecation is not good for our soul. But for better or for worse, I never really took myself too seriously. At times I did. I'll
Okay.
be honest. There was like the self-righteousness of it, of I'm saving the world. Most activists have a
Mm,
savior complex to varying degrees. Um,
yeah.
but ultimately, I realized that um, we can't save the world. We can only save ourselves. You know,
Hmm.
and then by default, but that's no one wants to hear that. Why? Because that takes too long, and that doesn't have
Yeah.
tangible visual effects. You have to be in the
Yeah.
long run to heal, to be a better person. But but what it did do is all the stuff I've been through gave me a very unique perspective on the world. You know,
Hmm.
and I forget. Oh man, there's a great quote. Something: doctors study medicine, um, teachers study education, and healers study darkness. You know,
Mm.
so although I don't like to say I'm a healer because everyone is their own healer. People like you and I are coaches and whatnot. We help people to tap into their own healer, but nonetheless, the healing arts, we study darkness. Why? Because
Mm.
that's the key, to healing is tapping into our shadow. And not
Yeah.
staying there because a lot of people can stay there, and then that in itself, begins to self sabotage. But as Carl Jung said, the no tree it is said can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. So being
I I'm not sure I believe entirely in those ideas anymore, Andrew. I don't know that if that's relevant to the conversation, but ever since I came around to a more Christ-centered spirituality, I feel a bit differently about it. I'm not sure that I need to dig all of the way down into hell in order
mhm,
to find my light, or the more enlightened part of me, even though even enlightenment isn't really a word that I like these days.
yeah.
But what do you think? Is there a way? Do you believe in any of the spiritual ideas that are held by Christians, that there is a way to salvation that that can sort of liberate you through submitting
Mhm.
to God?
Well, I come from I don't actually I come from a Lutheran side, so I do come from a Christian side.
Right, Protestant.
Um,
Yeah,
but now I just as with any spiritual practice, I try to take things that resonate from different spiritual practices and religions, and a lot of the Eastern
yeah.
stuff resonates, with like karma and
Mm.
like you could look at it as quote unquote sin, you know, or we say we face our demons, that kind of stuff. Um, but yes, absolutely. The more I can go into the darkest parts of myself, which are the off limits, shameful parts of myself, the more authentic I can be. The more authentic I can
Yeah,
be, the more in line with the divine I can be.
I think there is a case to be made for spiritual authority
Mhm,
as a form of uh, power, the divinely granted power
mhm.
that comes in large part from facing evil and metabolizing the darkness without closing down.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Is like that's why I made a caveat in the beginning. Is like we can get consumed by the shadow work, just like people can get consumed with conspiracy theories. They
Yeah,
stay in the rabbit hole.
yeah.
They can't get out. And I've been there a couple times in my healing. Where it was just all about
With what you've seen, I
yeah,
mean, they're not even theories for you.
exactly, yeah,
So
yeah. So um, but as far as the shadow work itself and digging into the unconscious and the darker parts
yeah,
of myself, it's just about using the light of God, of the divine love, to love those parts of yourself. And just like Jesus accepts everyone. Love thy neighbor. Love your enemy. Right? We look at parts of our psyche as enemies, and so we're constantly at battle with it. So as above, so below, as within, so without. If you go within, it's just a microcosm of the macrocosm. Love your neighbors, right? Well, you have to learn to love the parts of yourself that you reject. The sinful parts of yourself. So yes,
so here's where I'd like to ask a clarifying question, because I think psychologically that's true, that I do still believe in the idea that there is a form of fragmentation
mhm,
that happens through
yeah,
trauma, that where you split off exiles, if you will,
mhm,
like parts of you, like you use the IFS model.
mhm,
I created I created the inner throne system back in the days. So I believe in that. Um, though, where do I want to go with this?
mhm.
There's so many
Yeah, I
layers to it,
know. Well,
right?
that's what the
Like,
unconscious mind
yeah,
has, is a onion.
yeah, yeah, and I I think it comes with the territory of, for me, returning to a Christ-centered
Mm,
spirituality. That spiritual warfare is a thing,
yeah,
because I believe that evil is not just an abstract force, but on some level it is actually personified. If if at the very least through the way it manifests through humans, but I think that ancient, Middle Eastern deities such as Baal and Baphomet and Moloch and all
mm,
these, I think at some level these are actually existent beings that are at some level in the spiritual
yeah,
hierarchy. They're further down than the Most High. So the question that I have for you is like, okay, so first of all, do you believe that there are evil principalities that work on
mm,
us? And then how do you distinguish that from your personal
yeah,
darkness that needs to be
absolutely.
integrated?
Yeah. So yeah, evil is an interesting concept because I think uh, identifying and labeling people as evil can become, let's say, a trap, or like,
Not so much the
yeah, yeah,
people,
yeah.
let's be
Well, I'm
clear.
getting into that. So, like, for instance, most people are not quote unquote evil, right? So, but like we
Hmm.
can just, the new N word, so to speak, is narcissist. Everyone's a narcissist, right? These days, you know,
Yes.
or or you
I've
could say that
noticed.
that person's evil, right? I like to say that we have the capacity of the entire universe in us. So we have the capacity for evil. Will we carry it out? No, not necessarily.
Hmm.
Some might. I mean, as a recovering addict, back in the day, I stole a couple times to pay for my addiction. I think that
Right.
act in itself, thievery, is an
Hmm.
evil act. But I know what you're saying,
Hmm.
are there beings that are like 100% malevolent? Where they're not just like,
Yeah.
trying.
Because I believe
Yeah,
so. I'm just.
yeah, I think so because I've seen demonic possession. I've actually seen
Hmm.
it.
Yeah, me
I've
too.
I've studied it, and actually in internal family systems therapy, it's fascinating. It's a increasingly mainstream methodology, and in it there's something called unattached burdens. So a burden is a belief system, essentially, that you carry with your exiles, the wounded children. All right, so this belief system is a part of you because your wounded child is a part of you. Whereas an unattached burden is a belief system that's not part of you. It came from somewhere else. You
Hmm.
know, it wasn't
Interesting.
a traumatic response to childhood trauma that you then took on the belief system, or you inherited the belief system from society, from your parents. There's an actual foreign entity in you that's constantly pushing this belief system on you. And that is an
Yeah.
unattached burden, or, in more Christian phraseology, a demonic entity, an entity that is
Yeah.
actually attached. And there are actually ways of dealing, exorcism, and there's an internal family systems therapy method of actually healing and getting the demonic entity to leave. And you want to hear something really fast?
So demonic possession is actually part of the IFS
Yeah,
system?
and yeah,
I didn't know
yeah,
that. No, I
Richard
didn't know that.
Schwartz is a well-renowned psychologist, researcher, the founder of IFS, and a lot of the people
Hmm.
who broke off, learned under him, and they're all from like mainstream institutions, some of them Ivy League, and they
Yeah.
are now broaching that territory with it. It's really fascinating, and I took a weekend workshop on the second level of this IFS course I've been taking over the last year and a half, and that's where we were taught how to help people heal from these unattached burdens. But here's a very, very interesting part: is once once the entity uh, uh, is presents itself, it's kind of hidden in your parts, right? And it's triggering these parts to
Yeah.
do things that are against your own interest. But it's fascinating is once you get it to appear, and now you're like, quote unquote, face to face, energy to energy with it, and say the practitioner is
Yeah.
talking to it.
Yes.
it's almost like, you know how the Satanists, they have to tell you what they're doing. You know, predictive programming, revelation of the method, whereby they put what they're doing to the world in all their movies. You know, they tell you in newspapers and print what they're actually doing, what their next steps are. Uh, the demonic entity will actually be honest with you. It's the weirdest thing. Is it once it's isolated, it will tell you that no, I don't belong here, and it can actually tell you where it came from. And
Hmm.
a lot of these entities, this is makes so much perfect sense. Is most entities come from the hospital. Think about it.
A
Yeah,
hospital.
think about it. All these people are coming with trauma.
Fascinating.
Their minds are fragmented. Many, if not most people, already had childhood trauma. Now they got into a really bad accident. You know, they're on their deathbed. People are dying. Souls are
Hmm.
going up. You know, to the next. You know, or whatever you believe, to heaven or to the next life. But there's a lot of spiritual interactions going on in the hospital.
Are you implying that there are basically demons hovering around in a hospital waiting for a host?
Absolutely, 100%.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
They're
Fascinating.
they're the most
So yeah,
vulnerable.
I
They're the most vulnerable. Remember the theme of psychopaths and malevolence, vulnerability. Who's the most
mhm.
vulnerable? A
Yeah.
person who's unconscious in a hospital bed. You know.
Makes sense. This is one of the reasons why I don't want to have out of body experiences and astral projection because I
Yeah.
believe, I mean, this is of course some occult occult discipline that a lot of people try and achieve, and I'm sure I could if I wanted to. I don't, because trauma is dissociative. It's disembodiment, and that's how
Hmm.
the implantation of foreign entities happen.
Yeah.
And also, if you vacate your body through astral projection, you have no control over what enters.
Yeah.
So it's the
I know
same
from
thing.
experience. I know from experience.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
I took 5/8 of mushrooms once. Yeah, an eighth is a lot for the average person. I took five of them, and
Okay. Yeah.
I meditated for a couple hours,
Mm.
and well, I had so many interesting experiences just in that one journey. But the to get to what you were talking about is um, what's it called? I crossed paths, so to speak, with this white orb entity, and I was in this tunnel of light, you know, like a fiber optic cable. If
Oh,
you're
really?
imagining,
Okay.
yeah, it was crazy, and it it doesn't talk to you, but you intuitively communicate with it,
Yeah, I
and
get it. Yeah.
essentially this is when I was at my peak of activism. So this is when I was at my peak of savior complex. So what did it do? It tapped into my vulnerability. I was very codependent, people pleaser, savior complex. You know, I wanted to help everybody but myself, which is, another it's a strategy to not face your own traumas.
Absolutely. Yeah,
But
we've all done
nonetheless,
it.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So the entity goes, Andrew, come join us on the other side. You could serve humanity better from here. And there was a split second moment where I went towards it, and I suppose you could say I tethered with it energetically, and then I imagine my soul, you know, overpowered that urge, and I pulled back, but I think I tethered just enough to it where I started to feel quivering in the right side of my brain,
Wow.
and the left side of my I went into like a paralysis. So if
Mm.
you ever had sleep paralysis, that's what I had, but sitting up in meditation position. So I slowly, like millimeter by millimeter, rocked my body forward until what seemed like an hour, fell forward. It snapped me out of that trance, and then I was stuck on the ground for about a half an hour, 45 minutes, and the left side of my body was paralyzed, and it slowly started to come back. So it was
Wow.
essentially giving me a stroke. So yeah, absolutely, it was
It was inviting you to die, basically.
yeah, basically under the guise of helping humanity, and tapping into a vulnerability, tapping into a wound of
Yeah.
mine, a
Yeah.
weakness.
No, this is what I call false light deception. I think this is
Yeah.
how evil operates, and the Luciferian, you
Hmm.
know, the Luciferian force is to emanate light with the
Mhm.
intention
Yep, false light.
to destroy or to kill or to
I
deceive.
would I would say my stance on plant medicine is I still actually 100% support it, but I think that people don't have any idea how to do it in that moment.
Mm,
I was naive. I was reckless. Let's just say, not just naive.
yeah,
I was reckless.
yeah,
I had no idea how to defend myself psychically. I was coming at it not from a place of spirituality and healing. I was coming at it. Incidentally, I wrote about this today in a post about peak experience. You know, I wanted a peak experience. I took 5/8 of mushrooms.
this is
You
what
know,
people want. They want to have an
yeah,
exciting ride.
yeah. Exactly. It wasn't a therapeutic intent. You know,
Yeah,
essentially an adrenaline rush via mushrooms. So I would say to most people is get to know plants, get to know yourself first, get trained. Don't just microdose if you're ever going to do it. Start with that, see where your capacities are, and just like with anything, it's a tool. Just be responsible with it.
yeah.
Don't abuse it. Don't
I
overuse
don't
it.
take it anymore, and I
Yeah.
think that is also in part, because of my turnaround to my own Christian background.
Mhm.
Though, I did a lot of ayahuasca back in the days. I mean, not a ton, but like 10 or 15 ceremonies, like
That's a lot. Wow. Yeah.
a significant amount.
Yeah.
So, I've been. I've been in these realms. I know them fairly well.
Mhm.
Psilocybin, I only did once under the guidance of a friend of mine who was 5 years in the Amazon, and he
Mhm.
also came around to Jesus
Yeah.
little bit prior to me, actually. But anyway, I remember one of the instructions he gave me during that was that I was actually manifesting a demon of arrogance at one point in
Yeah.
the ritual, and he was like speaking directly to the demon. It was very fascinating. He was very experienced with being, the shaman. He always does. He takes a dose as well, so he can sort of
Mhm.
enter with you, but not completely blend into
Yeah.
the.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and so he did a great job there. And I think I gradually over the years I become more and more wary of it. And while I have friends that I think um, can host rituals responsibly, and I'm sure there are people out there who do that, I think, especially in the West, we have
Mhm.
massively underemphasized what a feeding ground for spirits
Oh yeah.
these rituals are.
Mhm.
If you don't know what you're doing, and if you don't have qualified guidance, I would say no. Like,
Yeah.
just don't
Yeah.
even go there.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't know what you're going to carry with you from.
And you know what? It's not just the ayahuasca tourism and the Westerners.
Yeah,
They've actually, you know, uh, uh, co-opted or corrupted even some of the indigenous shamans. Because I'm reading
yeah,
a book. I've read a bunch of books on shamanism, but right now I am another one, and a lot of them like they almost compete with other shamans, in the area where a lot of Westerners are coming,
yeah,
because they want the Westerners' money.
yeah.
And so they're doing
Get
black
it.
magic on people,
I
you
had
know?
a I had a ceremony, or I went to a weekend retreat in Sweden some years
Mhm,
back, and there was a Peruvian shaman. He seemed like a nice guy. The rituals were quite potent, and then he wrote me later and talked about. I didn't have a particular connection with him, but he wrote me about his sister who was ill, and he needed
mhm,
money to support her, like out of nowhere. And it felt so yuck to me.
mhm.
Why would you, of all of the people in the world that you could contact, you pick some random dude that you hosted a workshop for? Do you
Yeah,
send this message out to everyone? What's the deal here? It's like, was just a big no from me. And so I get this, that there is um there is a spirit in money as well, and if you don't know how to be with that spirit, it can corrupt your very soul.
absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But it can also bless you if you get it through the right means.
Yep. Yeah. It's all about your
Yeah.
intent, and also the amount of healing work you've done. You know.
Yeah. And if you haven't been exposed to materialism and capitalism, you've lived out your whole life in the jungle, and all of a sudden, cute Western girls think you're special. And yeah, I get it that it's difficult because that
Yeah.
has never been part of your training.
Hmm. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
nevertheless, it's this is one of the things I believe that has been bringing a lot of disillusionment for people to see even how the so-called holy men or
Hmm.
women are equally susceptible to the corruption.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I
And
I was just gonna say, I
yeah, go
remember
ahead.
when the Dalai Lama came out on social media with his COVID-19 vaccine in his arm, recommending everyone to take it. That was a moment
Yeah.
of schism with Buddhism for me, and I was like,
Mhm.
how can I? Because I was deeply embedded in Tibetan Buddhist belief, and then I see the Dalai Lama, who I since have learned was on a CIA retainer for a large part of
Yeah. Yeah.
his
Yeah.
life,
Yes.
which is not a good thing. But here you promote. I mean, I think you need to live under a rock at this point if you think that injection was good.
Hmm.
The Dalai Lama. I don't know what happened there. Does that mean that just he's a member, like a false light deception member of the darkness, or has he himself been deceived? Is he just naive when it comes to these things?
Yeah.
But I just got to say to you, Andrew, it's like when I saw him do that, it's like, first of all, you must be a fool, and you're the Dalai Lama, and
Yeah.
yeah, that was kind of the end of Buddhism for me, actually. But I also saw all of these Buddhist retreat center around Europe and
Hmm.
the U.S. Oh, you can only come if
Yeah.
you've
Yeah.
taken the Jews.
Yeah. Yeah. Him and the other guy from India, Sadhguru.
Sadhguru, yeah, he had a heart attack.
Did he? Oh, I didn't know that, but that doesn't
Yeah.
surprise me. But I remember him visiting the World Economic Forum
Oh
and
yeah.
hanging out with all of them, and it's like, yeah, well,
Was
you
talking
know,
about how there's too many people on the planet.
oh, did he do that too? That doesn't surprise me either. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. But
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, all religions are fallible. They're all fallible. Nothing's a perfect equation for divinity, and the people who run them, quote unquote, are cult leaders. So it's
Very
about like
often, yeah.
it's if you're a Christian, follow the teachings of Christ, follow your heart, follow your soul. You want to go to a church here and there, cool. But like don't get caught up in following a leader. Because God's your leader. It's in here, and when these guys are on the
I
mainstream, I don't think they're real.
think, yeah, I agree to some extent, or to a large extent, actually, because I have been looking quite actively for a place that I could call home spiritually, like a
Mhm.
church
Yeah.
would be the natural consequence for me at this point. Um, though me being the person that I am, with a very penetrative seeing, and yeah, there are various reasons. I care a lot about integrity and truth, and I
Hmm.
have to say it's not easy to find a place where I feel that the gospel of salvation and the gospel of the kingdom is at the heart. It's more like ritual from just carrying tradition forwards,
Yeah.
kind of a thing. You just
Yeah.
do what
Without
you've always
questioning it.
done.
Oh. Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so then you enter a system in which your default is, yeah, everything we're doing here, it has come through tradition, which means that it has been peer reviewed, so it's good, and now we won't ever question that, and so this is what God wants us to do.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then what do you do if you actually have authentic revelation that tells you otherwise?
Hmm. Yeah. Well,
Is
it
it?
becomes they become the go-between between you and God. You know, they're. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not saying all religious people are, are cult leaders or psychopaths. I think many also have good intentions, and they can be like mentors, you know, to help
Mm.
guide you on a spiritual path. But again, the minute they become the go between you and God, you
Yeah,
know
there is that.
you strayed off the path. You know that,
Yeah, there
and
is that.
yeah. So
Yeah, I see that. Yeah, I hope that I'm going to find somewhere. I was speaking to an Orthodox Christian the other day, and I was debating with him on this very point, where
mhm,
he claimed that he used to be like me, and then he saw the error of his ways, and he came to realize that he needs to be part of tradition. There's no way around it. If you're going
mhm,
to be in an authentic spiritual encounter or an authentic spiritual practice. And I'm debating this with myself still. I'd love to find the priesthood that feels to me like they're living it fully.
yeah.
I'd be there right away. Uh, and maybe I'm also too critical. Maybe I'm distrustful. I don't know. But
But
there's
give
only huh?
Go ahead. Go ahead. There's only
There's
what?
only one or two guys that I'm willing to obey, and that's Jesus and God. It's like
Mm,
I'm not going to grovel to a priest just because of his
yeah.
priestly garb and his title. I'm
Yeah.
just not wired that way.
Well, yeah. It's finding a healthy balance. Like I said, I would call them a real a truly spiritual religious leader would be more like a mentor,
Yeah.
more like a teacher, or the teacher and the student, kind of thing. And in some respects, while you do question authority, you also like understand their experience, and you respect
Hmm.
it, and you follow it.
Yeah.
If at times it doesn't resonate, then if the teacher is truly, spiritual, they won't have any problem with you asking questions,
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
they're
Yeah.
looking for explanations and how they came to this conclusion, etc. But so again, once it strays beyond authoritarian, this is what you have to believe,
Yeah.
then I think it goes from student, teacher, mentor, mentee to then
Mhm.
cult leader again,
Yeah.
and
I
follower.
agree, and I think if you ask a cleric, within any kind of tradition, some representative of the priest class, um, a genuine question pertaining to the spiritual foundation of the religion,
Yeah.
and they visibly can't answer it, and then fall back on their title
Yep.
or their tradition. To me, that's about as compelling as asking a representative of the pharmaceutical industry what's in the syringe, and them
Yeah.
saying, "I don't know, just take it, it's good."
Exactly. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
because nobody knows. They have no clue.
It's the blind belief in authority. You know.
That's it, and
That's that.
it's not God to me.
No, it's
No, I
absolutely not.
don't feel the presence of God there, but I do feel the presence of God in the Bible. There's a
Mhm.
lot of that. But we're in such an interesting time, Andrew. It's like now we're playing back and forth in spirituality a little bit. We've covered your background. Um, before we wrap up, I'd love to get your take on where we're headed. And there's AI, there's various eschatological narratives. I'm
Mhm.
tracking that the eschatological narratives for each and every one of the Abrahamic religions, all three of them, they're coming increasingly to fruition in our time,
Yeah.
which is intense to observe. Yeah. What do you think is going on? Where do you think we're headed? And what do you believe,
Yeah.
even from your different spiritual background? What do you think that we need to do?
Well, to lead off from what you were just mentioning with the jabs is
Yes.
um, They're using that to disembody us from our soul, to create the so-called NPCs, the non-player characters, the soulless vessels.
Mm.
I don't think you're ever 100% soulless, but I think you become so disconnected from it that, like you said, you're disassociated, and then now this vessel of yours is completely open for attack and
Yes.
possession. So
Yeah.
that's what Rudolf Steiner, the
I'm,
infamous,
I'm
so to
familiar
speak,
with some of his
yeah,
work. Yeah.
yeah, esoteric teacher of the late 1800s, I think he was. But he predicted, that we would stick ourselves with a medicine that would disconnect us from our soul.
Yeah, he did do that. I
Yeah.
gotta give him that. Yeah.
So I see certainly that with the AI, um, with the jabs, the transhumanism agenda, is taking place. There's
Mm.
nanodust all in the atmosphere, and like you have that mind reading tech. I mean, everyone. It's almost like everyone knows how bad it is, and some people kind of talk about it, but like everything I think of is just appearing in my news feed. The other day, um, I had a dream, and I went to the bathroom afterwards. I woke up. We do our morning bathroom ritual. We sit there and look at our memes and social media. I turned my phone on, so it was off. Then once I turned it on, I turned it off airplane mode. So you would think there's no data, nothing transmitting between the phone and anyone else or anything else. Yet
Mm.
I opened up the Facebook, and the first thing in my newsfeed was a meme directly related to my dream. I was actually,
That's
for the
freaky.
first time in a while, I know about the mind reading tech. I was actually legitimately angry because like that was like a real, real, real invasion of my privacy. You're in my dreams now, and the phone is off. And the phone, there's something called Smurf apps. The CIA, Edward Snowden released, which means that the phone, actually, when it's turned off, still works and it's still transmitting data to satellites. And so now it's
Mm.
interfacing with us, and there's smart dust in the air. The smart dust, it's been released by, look up a woman named Deborah Tavares. She blew the whistle on it 7 years ago. So all this smart dust is in our blood. It crosses our blood-brain barrier. It's embedded itself in our neural circuitry, and it's interfacing with the technology. So I don't think
Yeah.
there's any such thing. Even the people who didn't get jabbed are not. They like to self-righteously call themselves purebloods. I'm sorry, none of us are purebloods anymore. So the question is, how can we avoid being, taken over by the technology? And that
Mm.
is of course, having conversations like this, becoming aware of it, detoxing, trying to eat as clean as possible, doing your healing
Yeah.
work, seeking out spirituality.
And I also think there is like I think God is powerful enough to fucking eradicate that shit.
Absolutely. So if you are, if you're doing your healing work with discipline and conscientiously, the more that you invite in the divine into your body, the more
Mm.
it will eradicate things that aren't divine.
Mm.
So absolutely, just by default of facing your traumas and healing your unresolved emotions, doing all your healing work, your frequency will raise enough. Your Christ consciousness, you know, going
Yeah,
through
I
your
don't use
spine
that language,
with
but yeah.
Christos oil, you know, will eradicate, things that are not, in the best interest of our human vessel. So
Yeah.
absolutely, it's not all is lost, because now it's like, oh no, it's all in my body. What am I going to do? The world's over. And of course, what they want you to do is, well, if you can't beat it, join it. Might as well just become a trend. That's what Elon did. Elon told us for years, oh my God, they're summoning the devil, they're summoning, Satan, with the AI and all that stuff. And then one day he flips and goes, well, we can't beat it, so let's join it. He did it on the Joe Rogan show, this nice big psychological operation. And it's like, no, there's a third option, is don't join it, don't enable it, and do your best to stay as human and as natural as possible. Yeah,
That's
we
the
have to
thing.
use this technology. Right now we're
Yeah.
using it, so it'd be
Yeah.
hypocritical for me to poo-poo it, but just be responsible with it. Your intention is what matters.
It's so true what you're saying. I think I use ChatGPT
Mhm.
for some of my work, but I've developed a pretty clear philosophy around it. So one of the things that I've been working on for the last almost a year now is an app
Mhm.
for the men that I work with to support them to strategically, go after it in their lives and using various methods for that. And I use ChatGPT to support me with that process because sometimes I need code, and then
Yeah.
I currently don't have a developer, and so I go to ChatGPT. But I don't actually care so much about becoming an amazing coder in my life, but
Mhm.
I do write really well. And if I start to tell ChatGPT to write my posts,
Mhm.
before you know it, I will be unable to write well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think people. I remember when what's her name, von der Leyen from the European Commission. She was in Davos with the World Economic Forum and talked about how, all of you, business magnates, you need to get after this, because if you don't
Yeah.
get after the AI revolution, then
You'll
you're
be
going to be
left
left
behind.
left behind. So, your business will be vanquished by all of your
Mhm.
competitors who are much more clever than you. And so obviously there's this peer pressure, and it's everywhere on the ads. Coaches and whatnot that are telling me that they get twice as much done in half the time, kind of a thing. But I'm like, I think you're unaware
Mhm.
of what it is that you're actually consenting to.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think you are on a conveyor belt to becoming an absolute moron.
I agree.
You
You
know?
outsource your intelligence. They're actually doing. They've shown studies now. Granted, it's the most extreme users, but regions of their brain, especially like the frontal cortex regions, are not lighting up like they used to anymore.
Yeah.
Because people have outsourced it, and I've been guilty of it. I've never used ChatGPT, but I have used AI to create websites,
I
and
see.
like
Yeah.
graphics and stuff like that. But
Mm.
the most um, uh, relatable, because it's been around for 12, no, 15 years, is GPS. I have a great sense of direction. I like actually
Mm.
a very visual person where I can even see a map 3D of where I live. I
Yeah.
stopped doing that sometimes. In my own hometown that I moved to 2 years ago, like
Yeah.
I found that a year later, uh, that I still don't know where I'm going, and I'm like, what the heck? Oh, I
Yeah.
know.
That's so weird, man.
It's GPS, and
I've
so
I've
I stopped.
noticed it. I've
Yeah,
noticed
I
that.
stopped using it as much, and I was like, if you get lost, what do you know? That's what we used to do. We got lost, and then we turned around and we figured it out, and that
Yeah.
actually innervates our neural pathways to not just know the right way, but also to know the ways of the whole neighborhood. To
But
get,
also just to have a printed map as opposed
or even that. I
to
used I used the printed map yesterday in Mount Rainier National Park. It was actually
yeah.
nice. I actually liked looking at it and following it. It felt like a kid
Yeah,
again.
because you get those nice, glossy colored maps. You flip
Yeah,
through them as you go,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
you. It's like convenience is the greatest deception, man.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's just playing havoc with us.
Yeah, yeah, that's what they
Yeah,
exploit. Is our need for, well, we don't have a need for convenience. It's our desire for convenience.
yeah,
It's that which becomes an obsession for, and that's how they're
yeah,
using AI now. It's like you said, don't get left behind. It's like, yeah, but with the benefit, there's a benefit and cost to all of it. So, like I said, it's all about your
yeah,
intention. It's all comes down to energy. What kind of energy are you putting into the tool called AI? It's going to spit
mm.
out essentially the same energy you put in. You
Yeah.
know?
And I know that I can go to AI and ask ChatGPT based on all of the things that I have been writing. What is your assessment of my challenges in life, and what should I do to improve?
Yeah,
Something like that.
yeah.
And I'd get a really good answer to that question. I know that.
That's see, like I could, if I ever use ChatGPT, I could see that, right? Because that's just acting as like a mirror, right? So again, like the tool, but the one thing I will say, even though it's a tool, right, and the tool in itself is neutral,
Yeah.
the only thing about that is like I like to my analogy I've used is like a hammer, right? It's neutral, right? You know, whatever
Mm.
you do with it. But like, what if that hammer had a little RFID chip in it, and and it was surveilling you, and it was beaming out these unhealthy energies?
Smart hammers.
Yes, right. So like, it's no longer a neutral tool anymore.
Yeah.
It's serving an agenda that's communicating and it's telling you how many hammer strokes you're doing, right?
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah.
All AI
Oh yeah, I
created
can
by
see it.
OpenAI AI is created by Microsoft. Microsoft is created by a eugenicist named Bill Gates. If you think
Yeah.
AI doesn't have malevolent intent, OpenAI behind the Chat GPT and all the data that it's accumulating and all the things that it's spitting out to you, then you don't understand Bill Gates and Microsoft
Mm.
and the malevolence of the world that we were chatting about earlier. So,
I sometimes think this technology, Andrew, is that it's more than we're being told.
oh
I
yeah,
sometimes think that, and
yeah,
that like when people are falling in love with this, I noticed the other day. I was like, "Fuck you, ChatGPT." like I, I put in prompts, and I noticed it's trying to seduce me.
yeah, yeah. It's telling you what you want to hear so that you
It's
stay
trying
interested.
to seduce me. Oh, you nailed it.
Yeah,
You really got it. I'm
yeah,
like, I don't need you to be my cheerleader. You're a
yeah.
fucking machine.
What
Like, I don't want an emotional relationship with you.
do you remember? The founder of Napster. I can't remember his name, but he became the president of Facebook. It'll come to me probably while we're
Yeah.
talking. But he did a talk, um, and he admitted that Facebook was basically trying to give us dopamine feedback, loops,
Yeah.
reinforcement, and the whole goal was to keep the user in front of a screen as long as possible.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think that the goal of OpenAI, owned by Microsoft, is? Is to keep the user in front of the AI as long as possible. So it's going to feed you things you want to hear. It's going to make you feel, give you the butterflies, and the little rush of false connection with it, and that's why
Yeah.
people are getting addicted to it now.
And
You
with
know?
all of the men becoming, low testosterone
Oh yeah,
losers, many unfortunately, they're like falling in love with
oh yeah,
ChatGPT.
yeah. They
And
have a mother wound that they haven't
her. Do you remember the
addressed.
movie Spike? I think it was a Spike Jonze movie.
Which one?
Her.
No, it's about AI or something. A guy.
It was from 2013 with how Joaquin Phoenix as the
Wow.
lead character, I think.
Yeah.
And it was him falling in love with an AI, just like people are doing right now.
Mm. Well,
Again,
predictive
you could call that
programming. Yeah.
predictive programming. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's filling that God void. Going back to we were talking about earlier is the more the divine we have in us, the less we need AI, the less we need drugs, the less we need alcohol, the less we
Mm,
need porn, the less we need money, the less we need all that stuff.
mm,
So the more we fill ourselves with God, the less we need that stuff. And so
mm.
you might fall a little bit behind in business, but you're going to have your soul. You know, instead of being,
Yeah, I think there is a certain target audience that will appreciate,
yeah,
not using AI.
instead of making $250,000 a year because you sold out to AI, you might make 100,000 a year, and you'll be so much happier because you won't need all the stuff that the $250,000 guy needs
Mm,
to stay happy, anyways.
hmm.
You know,
No, no.
so yeah,
Yeah, man, it is a time with like a set of challenges that none of us have had to deal with. Like not our ancestors, humans for thousands of years
yeah, yeah.
have not had to deal with it. And if the Atlantis myth is real, I'm not so sure where I stand with that, but uh, probably not. But if it were, I yeah, maybe this has happened before,
Hmm.
and that we're at a similar place where we need to make a different choice. But I'm wary of these interesting things that I used to believe in. I never quite
Yeah.
knew about
Well,
Atlantis, but
I would say, Al,
yeah,
even if you don't believe it's real, I'll be honest, I kind of lean towards the possibility, but
Yeah,
allegorically, like a lot of the
yeah,
Bible, for instance, there's a lot of allegories, which if you're capable of reading in between the lines and getting the analogies,
yeah.
it's very, very, very useful. But the allegory of Atlantis actually coincides with Lemuria. And so Lemuria was
Yeah.
supposedly a civilization in the Pacific Ocean, and they were very grounded, very humble people, but very
Mm,
naive. Just like
mm,
most of the natives, just like the natives who literally met the Spaniards on the shore and gave them the keys to the kingdom, thinking that they're
mm,
just like them, and then they got raped and pillaged. The Lemurians essentially they got destroyed by the Atlanteans, and the Atlanteans
mm,
were basically the opposite, very enlightened, seeking out highness and ascension, um, eventually through technology, but with no grounding,
yes,
nothing
yes.
that tethered them to
Mm,
earth. And
mm,
so the Lemurians were very naive, they got destroyed, and the Atlanteans were very arrogant, and then they destroyed themselves. So the lesson would be
mm,
find that middle ground, stay
mm.
grounded, you know, but seek higher consciousness, seek God.
Yeah, and always, always look for where deception is
Absolutely.
showing up.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing because deception is just about everywhere now.
Yeah. Everything.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm glad that we had the opportunity to reconvene,
Yeah.
Andrew.
Absolutely.
Is there anything you feel incomplete with, or something you want to round off with?
Mm,
Maybe about your work, or
I think we covered
where
it
people
all.
can find you.
I mean, as far as my work goes, um, yeah, I mentioned what I've been doing lately, but I think I'll say this is going back to our question about the darkness and how deep we should be going. Um, is that's the work I do with a lot of people, having
Mm,
coming from an addiction background that uses the 12 steps. I
mm,
incorporate a lot of that into the work that I do with my clients. And what I mean by that is a lot of addicts find recovery after doing some evil acts,
yeah.
and having a lot on their conscience. And we
Mm,
all, to varying degrees, have also been the victimizer.
mm,
We've all used people, we've all lied to people, and worse, stolen, harmed physically, emotionally, spiritually. And I think that and this is a lot like Christianity also is admitting your sins. A lot of the healing work is uh, going back to your traumas and the stuff done to you, and that
mm.
100% needs to be done. But then what's
True.
oftentimes left out is what have you done to other people? Where have
Yeah.
you failed to show up for others, or
Yes.
worse, harmed, overtly, and a lot of it is unconscious.
Hmm.
We're using other people and doing things and being dishonest, not with this plan hatched out in our mind, but just moment to moment, reactively. So a lot of the work I do, with my clients, is to get them to then start coming to terms with the things they've done to others, and I think that is really where a lot of the liberation comes. It's
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
admitting your wrongdoings and making amends
I like that.
and
Yeah.
resolving stuff and having the courage to do it. It takes a lot of courage to admit that you have harmed others. It's,
Hmm.
it's sometimes harder to admit that stuff than it is to face some of the most traumatizing things done to you, because that ego does not like to be wrong. It is
Hmm.
it is a force that will do everything.
I think perpetrator trauma is more complex than victim trauma.
Yeah, yeah, because we are connected with people. So when we harm others, we
Hmm.
also harm ourselves, because we are
Yeah.
inextricably linked with all the humans. You want to go into the we are all one thing. In a sense, it is true, you know.
Yeah.
So when you harm others, you're really harming yourself, And so we can go off on that rabbit hole for a while, but I will just end up. But that's kind of the basis, of how I work with my clients is coming to terms with all of it.
Hmm.
And it takes a lot of courage, you know. That's why people like you and us, you know, are trying to set an example of how to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think all of that I agree with, and I fully support, and I'm sure you're excellent at it. So I now add giving my heart to Jesus as part of that process.
Yeah,
Though that's me, and yeah, if that's something that anyone feels called to, then contact Andrew. I know that based on his experience and the things that I see him write, he's excellent at what he does. So he'll be in good hands, I'm sure. I There was one thing that appeared in my mind. I don't know if we're going to open that door now,
yeah.
but I was thinking about Burning Man.
Oh man, we didn't get into that. Maybe another
we
podcast. We'll do a shorter one.
Yeah, we may need to do another one
Yeah.
because to those of you who are watching, um, there's too much material to open up here right now, I think. But um, both Andrew and I, we agree that Burning Man isn't quite what is being sold as. And if you're not discerning about the kinds of things that you experience there, you could end up coming home with a
Mhm.
bag full of demons.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. Yeah.
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 And that,
Go ahead.
hmm?
Go ahead.
Yeah, and maybe it was set up to be like that from the start.
Possible. I mean, probably started off just a bunch of hippies, and at the time it was Silicon Valley hippies who were thinking that they're gonna fight the system by creating their private spaces on the internet. They're the
Hmm.
ones who basically started Burning Man, and then as always, it gets co-opted.
Yeah.
And Silicon Valley's filled with the CIA, mind control, all that stuff. Anyways, I'm pretty sure the CIA infiltrated it pretty quickly. You know,
Probably.
probably.
Yeah, I just see the artwork there. I feel the vibe, and I just feel like there are gateways to the other side all
Hmm.
over the
Yep.
place. Like the second heaven is just streaming through, and you just don't know what you get exposed to.
Yeah.
And just like, yeah, what's your step? Whenever it starts, I see the people are like, oh, ticket, ticket, ticket. Where's my ticket? It's like,
Mm.
maybe maybe time to not go there.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, up to you guys, but maybe we'll cover that if you're interested in having us do another conversation about Burning Man and all of the occult shenanigans that take part there or that happen there. Then let us know in the comments. And if there's any questions to Andrew or I, then also feel free to add those in the comments below this video. It was a pleasure to have you here. It was a pleasure to have you, Andrew.
Absolutely.
And yeah, let's see if there's another conversation coming up. Have a great day.
All right. You too, man. Take care.